Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name's Anna Carvlin. I'm the System Implementation Specialist here at All Chicago. And we've also got Svetlana on the line. And there's only a very few of us. This is meant to be a small crew. And we are recording, so you can listen to this and watch it later if you need instructions or to share this with anybody. So Svetlana, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll let you get started. And if I can hand you the mouse as well, so you can click forward.
Great, thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. My name is Svetlana Zhuksimbieva. I'm with the Center for Housing and Health, Program Manager, and my organization provides outreach coordination, and we coordinate skilled assessors and access points for CES. So the purpose of this webinar is to provide information on assessing people who live with HIV and AIDS and who experience homelessness. And all of you were invited to participate because they serve this population, and we have additional resources that are available this summer. So first, we have some exciting news that Chicago House received funding for 60 supportive housing units. And these are scattered site units, which means that the subsidy stays with the client and could be applied to any unit in the community. And because these units are funded through Department of Housing and Urban Development or HUD, criminal background and immigration status will not be an issue. So you can refer people who are undocumented or who have criminal justice history. And these units are for people living with HIV and AIDS, who are single and who meet the HUD chronic homeless definition. So we had a meeting with Chicago House a few weeks ago, and they told us that they will be able to house about 10 people per month or more, depending on their case manager's capacity. And these are new resources, but please do remember that we have other resources, and that there are housing providers who request referrals through CES for people living with HIV and AIDS. As an example, we have Emerald House, who serve men who are chronically or terminally ill and who are HIV positive. And we also have other programs. So Chicago House is not the only resource. And so we have these new and existing resources for this population. And as some of you may know that we realized that we have very few people on the one list who reported their status as positive and who meet the chronic homeless definition. And with these new units, we identified this gap. And this may be due to the fact that we do not reach this population, or because people do not want to report their status, but it's likely a combination of both. And we would like to offer a few solutions to this issue, and we do need your help to assess this population so they can be considered for available housing resources. So now we will review the short-term strategy. If you encounter people who already have a CES assessment and who reported their HIV status in the vulnerability index, you need to update their assessment as an interim update. And of course, please ensure that their contact information is updated and that the homeless history tool is completed. If you encounter people who do not have a CS assessment and agree to share their status in the vulnerability index, create a new assessment and follow the standard field assessor workflow. And of course, we do have people who do not want to have their status in HMIS, but who are interested in this housing opportunity. So for these people, that's the reason why we are offering this webinar. So we are offering a different workflow, and we also provide you with a script on how to explain the new resources, and specifically Chicago House housing resource, because we also want to make sure that you explain what the opportunity is. And if people are interested, we will, of course, make sure that as few people as possible know that about their status, and no other skilled assessors will be able to view that information. And of course, we do have, please do remember that this is a short-term strategy, and because we have available resources this summer, but we will have a long-term strategy, which is going to be the call center that will be available for healthcare providers starting in August. And we will schedule training. We'll follow up with more information about the call center. But in the meantime, we do need to reach this population to make sure that everyone who is experiencing homelessness and who is HIV positive and who is interested in these resources is able to access them. And that's it for us. Thank you. Anna?
Sure, okay. So basically, we want to capture this information, like Svetlana said, in HMIS without people having to have their HIV status in HMIS. So I'm going to show you how to do that. There's a little bit of repeating, excuse me, what Svetlana said. And I will show it to you. I'll show you what you're going to do in HMIS. So basically, you're going to complete a new or update the client's existing CES assessment. If the client discloses their HIV status and is okay with that information being stored in HMIS, you would just document that in the appropriate location in HMIS and then lock the record, which you typically would do anyways. If it's not okay, if they're not okay with that information being stored in HMIS, then we're moving on to step 2, which is you're going to complete a completely different assessment. It's only 2 questions, and we called it something vague. It's assessment for increased participation, and it's visible and available only to certain people. Okay, so how to complete the assessment for increased participation. So if you've just completed or updated the standardized housing assessment, you're going to get out of EDA mode if you typically use EDA mode, and you will know, obviously, if you don't, that's because your only project is coordinated entry. But I believe mostly everybody on the phone will have to get out of EDA mode, and then you're going to enroll a client in a project which will be specific to you. And so I'll show you that list in a second. And then you're going to complete the assessment for increased participation questions. And the questions are, is the client recommended for priority 1 project, yes or no? And then for single individuals only, does the client appear to require medical respite? Which of course, there's one project that does provide that, and so that's why we want to know. So then here's the agencies and the assessors that I currently have. There's been an update in Howard Brown. Arcadia is not there. But so Care to Prevent, increased participation. Chicago House and Social Service Agency, increased participation. Howard Brown Health Center, increased participation. Renaissance Social Services, Inc., increased participation. And then Center for Housing and Health, we're just using their outreach project. Okay, so let me demo that briefly. So we're going to go, I'm going to shadow, I'll use Mira to try this. So we're going to go to our client. Okay, well, we're going to pretend Mira doesn't need to go into EDA mode. So we're going to go to client 3, or that she just was and finished an assessment. And so the client has been assessed, and you're visiting them. You are learning that they're okay putting their information into coordinated entry about their HIV status. And so you're just going to do an update just like you typically would. and update their VI and disability to share the diagnosis that they have. And they're going to save and exit out of there. So that's an interim update, right? If the client did not want to share their information in HMIS, you're going to go ahead and add an entry exit into the care to prevent increased participation. And we'll just call that HUD. Save and continue. And it's just these two questions. So we're going to say, yes, they're recommended for priority project 1. That means that they've indicated they're HIV positive, and that the reason you're filling this out is because they didn't want to document it in HMIS. And then for single individuals only, does the client appear to require medical respite? And then you're just going to save and exit. And that is it. So I'm going to go back to the slides and see if you guys have any questions or if Svetlana wants to add some more information here.
I just wanted to add that we will follow up with an email with definitely with the slides, and we'll also send you some information about the script and just a summary of next steps, if that's helpful. And we'll also share it with your supervisors and your teams are aware that not everyone has to disclose their status, because ideally that your teams will work to identify people who would be eligible and refer them to you for assessment. So that's something that we're going to discuss with you and your supervisors as next steps. But in the meantime, if you can just look at your caseloads and just identify people who could be eligible, and do check if since all of your skilled assessors, check whether they have an assessment, reach out to them, tell them about this opportunity, and follow the steps that we discussed during this webinar about if they are willing to disclose their status, then follow the standard workflow, and if they're not, if they do not want to share their status, then do follow the workflow that Anna just presented about. We will follow up with an email, but in the meantime, start thinking about who could be potentially eligible, and because these units are available. And I can just give you an example that we had, like for example, BYC, they assessed 4 people, and I believe that 2 of them were matched in the next couple of days. So people do have a high chance of being matched, especially since we don't have enough people on the one list. So please do assess people who are potentially eligible and tell them about this opportunity.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, and I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar. Thanks again.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.